Hello, welcome. And today we have a news video. It's been a while since I last brought this type of content to the channel, mainly because the emulation scene has been pretty quiet. Aside from RPCS3 updates, there really wasn't much worth talking about. But that's starting to change. And coming back with the news, we've got some pretty interesting updates. RPCS3 now has automatic game configurations. This means that in the latest versions, you no longer need to dig through the compatibility page to figure out the best settings for each game. We also saw a fork of NetherSX2 with Turnip driver support, which could be a big deal, especially for Snapdragon Elite users. But the question remains, on other devices, does this actually improve performance or compatibility? On top of that, Azahar brought back support for 3DS files, added Vulkan shader cache, 3DS LED emulation, and several other improvements. And to wrap it up, we'll talk about the current state of Nintendo Switch emulation, new projects popping up, interesting movement in the community. And at the same time, the lack of updates from Eden, which is now approaching 45 days without any changes in its master branch. If you want to buy original games while saving a lot, check out Instant Gaming, the digital store that sells games for various platforms, such as PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Get games of all genres with discounts of up to 95%. You'll also find a variety of gift cards and credits for other services. You can pay for your order through your credit card on a website with a 4.7 rating on Trustpilot. You're buying games directly from Instant Gaming, not from other retailers. If you encounter any issues, Instant Gaming offers 24/7 support. What are you waiting for to save? Links in the description. Let's start with something revolutionary that just arrived in RPCS3, automatic game configuration. Previously, when adding a new game to the emulator, you had to go to the project's wiki to find the ideal settings and manually replicate everything. Now, with this update, you simply launch the game using database settings, which are downloaded directly from the emulator's servers, automatically applying the best configuration. The only things you still need to adjust are resolution, FPS-related settings, and performance patches. Aside from that, the emulator also seems to have received some unannounced performance improvements, or perhaps there were specific changes to the game I was testing. I can now finally reach a stable 60 FPS in Gran Turismo 6. It's still not a perfect one-to-one experience, since there are minor visual artifacts. Updating the game reduces these issues, but also slightly impacts performance, as already mentioned by the developers. Overall, it's still worth keeping the game updated. If you want to test these new features, just update the emulator and download the latest configurations. While browsing around, I came across a version of NetherSX2 with Turnip drivers and decided to test it. The goal was to see if devices other than Snapdragon Elite actually benefit from it. The emulator already includes pre-installed Turnip drivers, version 24 for Snapdragon 865, version 28 for Snapdragon Elite and Gen 8, and version 26.2.0 for other devices. So you don't need to manually test drivers, as the developers likely already selected the most stable ones. For these tests, I used a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 device with 8 GB of RAM, and all footage was captured using an external capture card, meaning 0 FPS loss from recording. The first game tested was Black, one of the best-looking PS2 titles. Just like in the original NetherSX2, it runs at a stable 30 FPS with no visual issues. Champions Return to Arms uses the Snowblind engine, which was already problematic even on the original console. In emulation, there are no crashes, but slowdowns can happen during texture streaming. Still, gameplay here was fully functional with no visual issues. Unfortunately, Dirge of Cerberus Final Fantasy VII still has performance issues and remains unplayable on Android. God of War 2 showed some slowdowns in certain moments, but nothing that breaks the experience. Overall, it's still decent. Gran Turismo 4 had the most serious issues. The game only renders correctly in first-person view. Switching the camera breaks the entire environment. Right now, the only proper way to play it is still through the original NetherSX2. Midnight Club 3, on the other hand, runs well most of the time, maintaining about 95% stable gameplay. Finally, Need for Speed Most Wanted still underperforms. Even so, among all emulators tested, this version seems to be the best option for playing the PS2 version on Android. If you want, I can make a full comparison between this version, ARMSX2, and NetherSX2 to see which delivers the best experience on my device. Let me know in the comments. Now let's talk about Azahar. It's been a while since I covered it, but it recently received major updates, including the return of 3DS file support. This is especially useful for those who use fan translations, like I do. I had even discussed this with the main developer before. In the end, support is back. Files still need to be decrypted, but now you can enjoy the full 3DS experience without relying on other projects. Because of this, Azahar Plus is basically no longer needed. There's more. Vulkan shader cache has been implemented. Previously, shaders were compiled but not stored. Now they are saved, meaning the first run may have stutters, but future sessions will be smooth. Shader sharing might be possible, but generally Vulkan shaders are hardware dependent, so that might not work as expected. 3DS LED emulation was also added. It's not clear if it affects gameplay, but it improves accuracy. Vulkan optimizations were introduced, reducing RAM usage significantly. This is especially important since the emulator also runs on Android. Additionally, Azahar's code is now available for libretro, making it easier to integrate into platforms like RetroArch and expand to more devices, including Android TV boxes. Now let's dive into Nintendo Switch emulation. But before that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy this kind of content, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. As mentioned before, Citron is now Citron Neo. Ryujinx also went through naming changes, briefly becoming Ryujinx for Grisehue before reverting back. It continues to receive updates, while Eden hasn't had a new stable release in about 45 days. Let's dive deeper. Starting with Ryujinx, despite developers asking for community help, the project continues. Some contributors, like Lotp, are still making changes, including firmware compatibility improvements. However, changelogs remain vague, and recent updates seem minor. Citron Neo, on the other hand, introduced a completely redesigned interface, much more modern and user-friendly. But improvements go beyond visuals. It's currently one of the best options for running the recently released Tomodachi Life, and it performs well in FastRMX, a historically problematic title. It also includes firmware 21 and 22 modules, CPU improvements, reduced latency, and faster load times. However, Android support may be nearing its end, as developers seem less interested in maintaining it. Overall, the project is progressing, but there's a warning: some users reported virus detections on VirusTotal. This is likely a false positive. The original Citron had the same issue early on, which was quickly fixed. According to Lisbeth, removing these warnings would require paying around $500 monthly to Microsoft. So for now, it's safest to treat it as a false positive. If in doubt, contact the developers directly. As for Eden, as mentioned earlier, there have been no updates in about 45 days. One of the last changes was a Vulkan update improving graphics, especially on Snapdragon Elite devices. However, CI changelogs remain vague, making it hard to track real improvements. For now, it's best to wait for a new stable release. If you want to download any of the emulators mentioned, I'll leave links in the description pointing to their official repositories. And that's it for this week's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.